Ladies and gentlemen, our ceremony will begin in 2 minutes. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones or place them in silent mode. Also, please remove any access badges you may be wearing so they do not appear in any of the pictures. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Colonel Mike Lukeman, 18th Airborne Corps Director of Operations, we welcome you to today's retirement ceremony for Lieutenant Colonel Robert Nesbitt. At this time, we would like to pay special recognition to the distinguished guests, friends, and family that are in attendance today. Brigadier General McKean, and to Colonel Nesbitt's family, Mrs. Janelle Nesbitt, his son Trey, daughter Gabby, Mrs. Patricia Nesbitt, Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt's aunt. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in the celebration of Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt's career and retirement. The retirement ceremony is an old and time-honored custom. In the days past when soldiers retired, the entire regiment turned out to honor them with a farewell review. In keeping with this custom, we join together today to recognize Lieutenant Colonel Robert Nesbitt, who has served his country with honor, duty, and devotion. Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt has stood his post for over 39 years of faithful service. Today we exercise the first general order and properly relieve him of his post as we bid him a fond farewell. We stand with him to salute him and his commitment to the Republic. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the arrival of the official party, then remain standing for the playing of our national anthem. Please remain standing for the invocation, which will be delivered by Chaplain Lieutenant Colonel John Scott, Military District of Washington Chaplain, followed by remarks.
Let us pray. Almighty God, you sustain us in the work to which you called us. Be here with us today as we celebrate your servant's work for our Army and nation. God, you filled Lieutenant Colonel Rob Nesbitt with the fidelity, fortitude, and faith to go all the way in training, leading, and caring for this country's sons and daughters for nearly 4 decades. From always faithful to this will defend, you called him to stand in the gap and protect those who could not protect themselves. Thank you, Lord, for the life and family that Rob and Janelle have built together. Thank you that they can share this moment with Trey, Gabby, and a host of family members, friends, and co-workers. As Rob and Janelle flip to the next chapter of their story, I ask you, Lord, bless them and keep them. Make your face shine upon them and be gracious to them. Turn your face toward them and give them peace. In your holy name I pray. Amen. Please be seated. So in good pastoral / chaplain fashion, once I have the mic, I'll be slow to relinquish it. But truly, it's my honor to be here today to celebrate my friend and fellow paratrooper, Rob Nesbitt. But before I go any further, I definitely want to issue a public apology in front of everybody here to Rob for any time that I called you Grandpa, Gramps, old man, or like Sergeant Shiplett would say, that I accused you of entering the Marine Corps when Jesus was a corporal. Rob and I served together as scout platoon leaders in our first assignment as armor officers. I was fresh out of college, and Rob had already been serving in the Marine Corps and as a soldier and commissioned out of OCS when we got there. I don't know why, now that I'm here, why I thought early 30s was so old back then, but I do apologize for all those jokes. But in all seriousness, Rob and I spent time together in Alpha Troop 117 Cav, also known as Shadow Troop, and that time set the trajectory for the rest of my career. 117 was the 82nd Airborne's Division Cav. It was all aviation except for Alpha Troop, which was its ground recon squadron, or recon troop, sorry. The troop had an authorized strength of about 68, 70 people. You know, back in those days, pre 9/11, we ran about 58 people at that time. But though that unit was small and unique, we fully embraced the warrior ethos that the All-American Division is known for. At a period of time while we were there, that troop had the highest percentage of Ranger and Jump Master qualified paratroopers in the division. Whenever there was an airborne operation, the leaders from our brigade always wanted to be on the Alpha Troop bird. That unit was very special. And Rob was a big part of that unit's DNA. He and his platoon brought toughness and experience and compassionate competition to everything that pushed me and my platoon, and then also first platoon, to be the best that we could. Whether it was designing our own training, averaging over 300 points on the APFT, using the extended scale, or outflooring and OCing each other's platoons, the officers, NCOs, and paratroopers of Shadow Troop were among the most self-motivated group of individuals that I've worked with in my nearly 3 decades of service. Rob was my peer, but he was also my mentor. He had been in the military for about 11 years already when we first met. And again, I was just fresh out of college. I didn't know anything. He was always ready to share his experience and give coaching, but he was also willing to learn. The biggest thing I learned from Rob is that you can compete hard and very hard against each other, but still be the best of teammates. Whenever Rob had success or a good idea, the first thing he did was share it with the rest of us to make us all better. So our whole troop benefited from what he brought to the fight. We held everyone to the standard, but also made sure that no one was left behind. I applied the lessons I learned from Rob and the men of Alpha Troop to my time as a commander, a civil affairs team leader, and as a chaplain. Rob's commitment to professionalism and teamwork continues to echo forward in our Army through the people that he led and cared for in Alpha Troop. Thank you, Rob, for your leadership, and more importantly, thank you for your friendship. I'm truly grateful that our paths crossed and that I had a chance to be here with you today, the place where our officer careers started together. All the way airborne forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, the host for today's ceremony, Colonel Mike Lukeman.
First, distinguished guests, General McKean, Mr. Davis, Colonel Elliott, I appreciate you taking the time to join us here. And then friends, family, teammates of Colonel Nesbitt, I appreciate you taking the time to come and help us recognize and celebrate his 39 years of service. And I want to start with extending a warm welcome to the family. So Janelle, Gabby, Trey, your Aunt Patricia, cousin Rebecca, the remainder of the family that came in from around the country. I appreciate you taking the time to come in and celebrate Rob. And then to you, Rob, I appreciate the opportunity just to be a part of the ceremony, right? Humbled and honored to be a part of the ceremony of recognizing your service, because it's one of the best stories of service, of dedication to our nation that I've ever come across during my military career. All right, and I'm appreciative of it, and I'm looking forward to messaging some of this story about Rob and his family to the team in attendance. Okay? But to get started, we got to go way back in time. We got to go back to 1986, right? So let's talk a little bit about 1986, right? You could get a postage stamp for 22 cents. You could put a quarter into a vending machine and get a cold soda. Right? For 87 cents, you could get a carton of eggs. And Janelle, the fashion at the time was big hair, and we have seen the pictures. Right? It was big hair, it was acid wash jeans, it was neon shirts. Right? The hot music at the time was Lionel Richie. Say You, Say Me. Right? A little Peter Gabriel Sledgehammer. Right? The movies, we're talking the release of Top Gun, Crocodile Dundee. Right? I mean, we are way back in 1986. Right? Now, some of us in the crowd know, we know Rob is not known. He disseminates all our orders, but he is not known for his technical savvy. But here's the deal. There was no World Wide Web in 1986. Right? PowerPoint wasn't even a thing until a year later. So we got to give Rob a little bit of a break on harassing him for his technical savvy. Right? But in 1986, right, same time as all those things were happening, Rob walks into a Marine Corps recruiting station, right, with the promise of becoming a paratrooper. He signed up as a combat engineer, and what he got was sent to Galdar, Iraq a few years later, right? Right? No airborne school in sight. Right? And we're going to pick up right there. But I want to take a step back from 1986 and tell the story on how you got in that Marine Corps recruiting station. Okay? Only child, great family, middle-class family in the Midwest, right? Kansas, Missouri, ended up in Arkansas. He went to school at the University of Arkansas for a year, and Rob, which you don't know now, because as they said, they call him Grandpa and Pops now, right? What you don't know is this is a great athlete, a great runner, fantastic runner. Rob at the time thought he may be a world-class runner. So he decided he's going to leave school, he's going to pack up his running clothes. Remember, 1986, we got short shorts, we got socks up in here with stripes on them, right? He throws all those in a bag, and he moves out to Eugene, Oregon, where the best runners on the globe were training at the time. We're talking Prefontaine, right? So he thinks he's the next Prefontaine. He gets out to Oregon, and he realizes he is a great runner, but he is not a world-class runner. So he's there a couple months. He's like, I have got to support myself. I've got to find a job here, right? And running, I thought running was going to be it. Running is not going to be it. So he goes down to the Marine Corps recruiting station and enlists in the Marine Corps. It's about how it went, right?
Yes, sir.
And so when he enlisted, I mean, let's go. He enlisted in the Marine Corps, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of us in this room, myself included, and a lot of soldiers and Marines that have served alongside him that are grateful that he made that decision. Right? Because we have all benefited from his leadership, his sage wisdom. I mean, he's got a tremendous work ethic, right? And he's got a serious warrior ethos that I'm going to talk about a little right now. So when you see Rob now, if you didn't see him in uniform with all his decorations on, say you just saw him walking down the street, right? You wouldn't know that he's a decorated war hero, right? And some of us in this room, when we interact with him on a daily basis now, you would not know that he has been awarded for valor in combat on 2 separate occasions, right? When he was in the Marine Corps and when he was in the Army. There's not many people in the military right now that can say that. I would say maybe double digits, maybe. And he's one of them. Right? An absolute war fighter. Purple Heart, wounded in combat. Right? He has all the combat decorations you can imagine, right? He has them. People will miss that. Even our own peers miss that. Right? An absolute war fighter. So when you see all the pictures later, and he's got all these pictures where he's smiling, right, and he's happy, know that there's another side of him as well, right? He's a gall-darn national treasure, right? And for training, the kids are like, there's no way. Right? We're going to come back to that too. They're like, there's no way that's my dad he's talking about. So, and for training, Ranger, Sapper, Master Parachutist, right? All the skill badges, right? I want to talk about resiliency in this guy in training, though. He goes to the Marine Corps. He just wants to be a paratrooper. Leaves the combat engineer. He's in the Marine Corps 5, 6, 7 years. He never gets even a chance to go to airborne school. So then he says, well, I'm going to go to the Army so I can go be a paratrooper. 4 years later, he like tricks himself into getting into so he's been in 10 years. All he came in to do was be a paratrooper. It took him 10 years to actually go to airborne school. And then once he got the opportunity, absolutely made the most of it. Became a master parachutist. Right? Became an absolute expert at it. Right? So I want to go a little bit into Rob's time in combat, because some of us aren't familiar with it. So we'll start with Desert Storm, Desert Shield. So some of you might think in here that the first time we went to Iraq to fight was in 2003. It's not the case, right? 1990, 1991, people like Rob were headed to the Middle East to fight in Iraq. And it was a different type of conflict as well. Right, so when I asked Rob, tell me a little bit about Desert Storm, Desert Shield. What was the experience like? He said, this is what I remember. I remember getting ready for the invasion, and I remember my commander saying, take a good look around. Right, because 50 to 60% of you aren't going to survive when we go breach the Iraqi minefields. So tell me more. What else do you remember here? Like, I remember going 68 days without a shower. I remember sleeping on the ground for 4 straight months. I remember B-52s flying overhead and bombing targets in front of us. Right? So, the oil wells. You guys may have seen it on TV. They lit the oil wells on fire. So if you're a young Marine like Rob, you don't know what time of day it is. You have no concept of the time of day because it's always just black. Everything is black. Right? Noon, midnight, it doesn't matter. He talks about being so disoriented during that because it was all black. It's all he could see. Right? Then he takes this, and we'll talk Iraqi freedom. And I said, tell me about Iraqi freedom. And he talks about the dichotomy of Iraqi freedom when you're in the FOB, and some of us can relate, and you feel safe in the FOB. Like there's some normalcy in the FOB. Right? And the FOB is the base that we operate out of. But then he goes, then you go outside of the wire, and it's always dangerous. It's always like you're always on edge, right? There's IEDs, there's snipers, there's small arms fire, and he talked about how the dichotomy was something that always stood out to him, right? But he's also been in Inherent Resolve, so counter-DASH operations in Iraq and Syria. He's been in Joint Endeavor in Bosnia. He was in Kiev in Ukraine when Russia invaded Ukraine last time, right? One of very few Americans in there, an operation, Assure, Deter, Reinforce. Right? He has tours in Korea, in Germany, in Norway. He's deployed to Taiwan, to Guatemala, and this is just, I can't stay up here all day talking about it. But we're talking about an absolute epitome of a professional soldier right here. Right? So, and again, I think some of this may get lost when you interact with him on a daily basis on what exactly Rob is all about. Right? So, and to me, it's extremely impressive, Rob. And I want to go to the positions you've held and how you've led in combat. So he's led in combat from a fire team leader to a squad leader to a platoon sergeant to a company commander to a battalion commander. He's seen it from all sides, right? From the enlisted side, young enlisted soldier to a gall-darn, officer commanding in combat. Right? And I asked him in 1997, he transitioned to be an officer. I said, why did you transition to be an officer? He'd already been an NCO in the Marines. He'd been an NCO in the Army. He said he needed more say after seeing what he had seen in the prioritization of the training and what was being trained and the orders process and the rehearsals process. Because he said at the end of all of those things is a young kid, a young soldier that is relying on you to make the right decision. And that is why he transitioned, right, to be an officer, because he wanted that responsibility. And I asked him what he was most proud of, and he said, I'm most proud of the fact that I never forgot who I was, right? I never forgot where I came from. And I never forgot that at the end of every order I ever gave, there was a young kid at the other side of that order that was executing, that was relying on me to make the right decision. Right? He was also proud of a lot of the mentorship he gave throughout his career, the mentorship to people like myself and many of us that are in the room. I'm going to go into some interesting facts about you. Okay? So, he's an armor officer, right? He has 11 years in the 82nd Airborne Division. He's a master parachutist, but he's an armor officer. He's never been on a tank. Right? Complete anomaly. Been staged in 12, or he's been stationed in 12 different countries, right? Now, this one gets me going when I think about it. Just letting you know. So, Rob took a break in service from the Marines and the Army, and he had about a 6 to 8 month break in service, and he was a State Farm agent during that time. Right? So anytime I think of him being a State Farm agent after just winning the war as a Marine Corps vet, I think of the Galdarn State Farm commercials, right? And I think all the orders, like I said, come through him. And I can see him in the DJOP or Operations Center, pressing send on an order. Right? Send. He's like, discount double check. Right? Right? It is hard for me to get that Galdarn out of my mind, that vision of Rob just owning that moment. Now I'm going to start with your family. Okay? So I'm not going to go into any more war stories too much about Rob, but I'm going to tell some stories about your family. We're going to start with you and Janelle. Okay, so get ready here, Janelle. Okay, so how did they meet? Rob is getting ready to deploy to Desert Storm, Desert Shield. He's in the airport with his fellow Marines. Now we're talking Desert Storm, Desert Shield. This was like a stressful time. You're saying goodbye to your family, and you don't know if you don't know if it's a 5-month deployment or a 15-month deployment. And the conflict before that was Vietnam. So let's be honest. You don't necessarily know you're coming home again. That's what's going through the minds in the airports, right? So the Marines are all up front. Rob's with all his buddies, and he doesn't have family there at the airport. So he's sitting in the back. He's probably got his headphones on, listening to Lionel Richie, right? And Janelle is there supporting one of her friends who is saying goodbye to a loved one, right? So she's also sitting in the back watching. There's all kinds of emotion in front of them, tears, everybody's crying. Rob's listening to Lionel Richie, and he looks over and he sees Janelle. And they make eye contact, right? And they start some small talk, right? Rob puts his headphones on, heads off to the airplane. And this is where the stories diverge a little bit, okay? So Janelle's version of the story is that they're making small talk, and Rob is along the lines of, hey, kind of enjoying our company right here. I think maybe we should write to each other during this little deployment I'm on. And Janelle's like, well, I'll think about it. Man, this is Janelle's version, right? I'll think about it. Rob's like, okay, all right. Rob's version is along the lines of, I just got in the plane, I'm getting ready, I'm listening to Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer after a long run, getting ready to go invade Iraq, and my fellow Marine comes up to me and says, hey, you know that lady you were talking to? She thinks you're pretty sexy. And she wants to know if you want to exchange addresses and write. Right? Now, I'm sorry, I tend to believe Rob's a little bit. But what I will tell the team here gathered is regardless of whose version you believe, they started writing that whole conflict. They were pen pals that whole conflict. Right? So then Janelle, when he gets home in the airport, Janelle is there waiting for him. after the war. They date for 15 months. They get married. They have Gabby. They have Trey. They've been married almost 33 years now. How about a round of applause for that? And I will tell you, Janelle, you have a very impressive background yourself and a very impressive history of service to our nation as well on all these posts, the education centers, the child and youth development centers, the FRGs, all Rob has been involved in. And all your efforts have not gone unnoticed. And they're very appreciative. And I look forward to giving you some awards here in a moment to express our appreciation for everything you've done. So thank you. I'm going to end with a little bit, I'm going to bring the kids into it here. Okay, so a lot of times when we're in the military, our kids have no idea what we do. No clue. Right? I mean, they were laughing when I was telling war stories about them, right? Like, couldn't happen. So, and we don't do a good job in the service as telling our kids what we do, frankly. So Rob is he's a staff officer, and Gabby's about 10 years old. They get home around dinner table one night after work. They're probably watching reruns of Cheers or the Golden Girls at the time, who knows, right? And they ask, hey, what'd you do at work today, Dad? They're like, oh man, it's a busy day. I made sausage all day, doing a little this, a little that. So a day or two later, Gabby goes to school, 10 years old. It's like, hey, tell the class about your parents' day. And Gabby says, my dad is in the Army. He's a cook in the Army. And he makes sausage all day. No clue that her dad has multiple Valorous Awards, decorated combat leader. Right. So, hey, I thank everybody again for attending. Rob, truly a very great honor to participate in the ceremony, and a tremendous amount of respect for your service on behalf of everybody here. Just indebted to you for your service to our nation. Okay? All right. All the way, airborne. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, Mrs. Janelle Nesbitt will join Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt on stage to receive the following awards: the Meritorious Public Service Medal, the United States Army Certificate of Appreciation, and the Order of St. Joan. Please remain seated for the duration of the ceremony, including all awards and presentation and the publishing of the orders.
Dead center.
Attention to orders. The Meritorious Public Service Medal is being awarded to Mrs. Janelle Nesbitt for exceptionally meritorious service, leadership, and selfless support of the U.S. Army for over 30 years. Janelle Nesbitt's leadership and selfless dedication directly enhanced all Army families in the unit that her husband served in. Janelle Nesbitt's willingness to volunteer her time are in keeping with the finest traditions of the military, DA civilians, and Army families, and reflect greatly upon her, the 18th Airborne Corps, and the United States Army. Signed, Gregory K. Anderson, Lieutenant General, United States Army, Commanding. The Department of the Army Certificate of Appreciation is being presented to Janelle Nesbitt on the occasion of the retirement of her husband from active status with the United States Army. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, Colonel Poindexter, the Senior Armor Officer on 18th Airborne Corps staff, will present the St. Joan d'Arc Award from the Cavalry and Armor Association to Mrs. Janelle Nesbitt. The citation in part reads, Janelle Nesbitt both lived and exemplified the best of an Army spouse with her over 30 years of support, not only to her husband's career and his units, but also the Army posts where they were stationed. During this time, she saw the transformation of the FSG to the FRG to the SFRG. Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt will now present gifts to his family. Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt will present flowers to his wife, Janelle, in appreciation of her love and support to him and to the Army through volunteer work and SFRG. He's also giving flowers to his Aunt Patricia, his daughter Gabby, and a token to his son Trey. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt will receive his awards, to include the Legion of Merit, the Silver Medal of the Order of St. George, and his certificate of retirement. At this time, Colonel Lukeman, the Director of Operations for 18th Airborne Corps, will present the Legion of Merit to Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt. Attention to orders. The Legion of Merit is being awarded to Lieutenant Colonel Robert P. Nesbitt. Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt distinguished himself by extraordinary meritorious service to the United States Army during a career spanning over 39 years. Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt enlisted as a combat engineer in 1986, was commissioned through Officer Candidate School in 1997 as an armor officer. Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt spent his officer career in airborne cavalry units and striker cavalry units. During his career, Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt served multiple combat tours and deployments, including Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Operation Joint Endeavor Bosnia, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Inherent Resolve, and Operation European Assure, Deter, and Reinforce Kiev, Ukraine. Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt culminated his career as the Deputy Director of Current Operations for 18th Airborne Corps. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, Colonel Poindexter, the Director of Current Operations for 18th Airborne Corps, Senior Armor Officer and 18th Airborne Corps staff, will present the Silver Order of St. George to Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt.
So before we present this award, it takes some explaining. We've mentioned already Rob, lifetime paratrooper, ending his career as an armor officer, right? I have the honor and privilege of being his final boss in the Army. I think the universe had something to do with that, possibly. But a lot of branches in the U.S. Army have patron saints. The patron saint for the armor branch is St. George. The story starts in 280 AD with a warrior named Nestor who defended Christian churches in Turkey, and they named him George for that act. Then in the 12th century, it's a story a lot of people are familiar of as St. George slaying the dragon, and that became the symbol of the mounted warrior defeating evil. Crusades occurred, that story continued. Then you have the 14th century where England carried that story forward and founded the Order of the Garter, which is one of the oldest and most noble orders of their knights. After that, fast forward, 1937. Pope Pius IX made St. George the patron saint of the Italian cavalry. And oddly enough, that's when the United States adopted the red and white colors that you see on cavalry guidons and battle flags across the entire Army. Then in 1986, the Army officially adopted and the Armor Corps officially adopted St. George as their patron saint. There are 4 different types of awards. There's the Black Medallion, which is really reserved for junior leaders that have done successful time. There's the Bronze Medallion, which is reserved for troop command or successful squadron command. There's the Gold, which has only been given to 66 people since 1986. And then there's the Silver, which we're going to present to Rob today, which is normally reserved for brigade commanders and command sergeant majors. But based on his distinguished and honorable service, we're going to present that to him today.
The citation reads in part: the Silver Medal of the Order of St. George is awarded to Lieutenant Colonel Robert Nesbitt. Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt dedicated a life and career serving both our nation and our Army in a distinguished career highlighted by multiple combat deployments, multiple commands, and multiple airborne assignments. He retires after 39 and a half years of service to our nation. His leadership and professionalism throughout his career made a direct and lasting impact to the soldiers and paratroopers he led. He embodies the finest qualities of the Armor Branch and the cavalry traditions. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, Colonel Lukeman will officiate Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt's retirement. Lieutenant Colonel Robert P. Nesbitt Jr. entered service in 1986 and retires after more than 39 years of service. At the time of his retirement, Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt served as the Deputy Director of Current Operations for the 18th Airborne Corps, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Upon retirement, Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt and his wife plan to stay in the great state of North Carolina. Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt is receiving his certificate of retirement. It reads in part, Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt, having served faithfully and honorably, was retired from the United States Army on 30 September 2025. Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt will receive his Presidential Certificate of Appreciation and the tri-sign letter at a later time. They are in production following the recent change of administration. The American flag is being presented to Lieutenant Colonel Nesbitt in appreciation for his honorable and faithful service. Please remain seated for the publishing of retirement orders. Attention to orders. The people of the United States express their thanks and gratitude for your faithful service. Your contributions to the defense of the United States of America are greatly appreciated. You were released from active duty on 30 September 2025, and on 1 October 2025, placed on the retired list and transferred to the United States Army Reserve Control Group, retired. On behalf of a grateful nation, the United States Army proudly salutes Lieutenant Colonel Retired Robert P. Nesbitt and family. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Lieutenant Colonel Retired Robert Nesbitt.
So we had a video, and apparently we don't, which is actually kind of, I guess it'll play into what I'm going to talk about. So first of all, to everyone who came, thank you. General McKean, Mr. Davis, Colonel Elliott, thank you for coming. And a special thanks to Colonel Lukeman for hosting today's ceremony. He asked not to have his bio in the program, but I will share for those who are not in the military, he is the Director of Operations for 18th Airborne Corps, and that's a really big job. So sir, thank you for your time, and thank you for the kind words. Chaplain Scott, thank you, and thank you to Gwen for coming from Washington, D.C. Thank you for your kind words. And John, if I'm not mistaken, I think you were probably the last shadow trooper out on the metaphorical screen line. Thank you too to my family for coming and the lifelong friends that traveled to attend today. And thank you to the 18th Airborne Corps Protocol team and to the members of my G33 team. Without their support, it probably would have been me looking at Janelle. And the ceremony would have not been what it is at all. So Why was I going to show a video? Well, first, it was photographic evidence that I actually did serve for 39 years. The length of time has crossed into the realm of unbelievability for people. And I also set it up to honor my children, Trey and Gabby. And that's really why, and I'm sorry that I was not always around when you two were growing up, but I wanted to give you some sense of what I did when I was away from you and when I was away from your mother. There was a recurring theme in the slideshow that I'll talk about, and I would ask if you caught it, but you can't catch what you can't see. But the theme that's recurring is family. And for someone who serves in the military, you really have two families. You have your work family and you have your personal family. A military career is a hard life. You're always under what I call the specter of what's next. Next deployment, next assignment, next boss, next subordinate, next jump, next training event, next suspense, what's next? For those of you in the military, that question likely resonates as much for you and your family as it does for me and my family. The Army fights as units, but it's really made up of individuals. And I've loved the opportunity I've had to work with the individuals that I've served with in my work family. For me, that work family experience started in 1986, as Colonel Lukeman talked about. And in the program, you can see the various units that I've served with. By the way, my first platoon sergeant was a Vietnam veteran, and Vietnam was only a little over 10 years in the past when I first enlisted. And I remember looking at that dude going, oh my gosh, he is so old. The challenge for me now is I realize you all look at me and you're like, oh my gosh, that dude is so old, and that's me. So things tend to come full circle. The work family experience that I had continued throughout my time in the military, and it included the time I spent with Chaplain Scott, then Second Lieutenant Scott, when our personal and our work families crossed paths while we both served in Shadow Troop 117 Cav, Navy 2nd Airborne Division. That work family concludes here now with the G33, which is the current operations section of 18th Airborne Corps. On the work family side of things, the one constant that has motivated me to stay as long as I've stayed is the soldiers that I've been privileged to serve with. And I would submit the one thing that all soldiers deserve is great leadership. And so, was the leadership that I provided good enough? I don't get to decide that. Those in this audience and those that I worked with, they get to make that decision, not me. What I can say is I've tried my best to serve those I have served with, and I will also share that I remember as a private developing this sense that I needed to do better. Better not for me, but better for those to my left and better those to my right. And that feeling has never left me. Even now in the G33, I still have that feeling that I need to do better for the teammates that I'm working with. As important as work family is, I also recognize that work family will move on. That's the way it always is. Which is why in this moment, I feel an acute sense of loss. But it's that personal family that will remain. And I am so very fortunate to have in my personal family my bride, Janelle. Ours is truly a wartime marriage, as Colonel Lukeman described. Now, it's a classic he said, she said, but I'm going to tell you the truth. We literally did meet by chance. We did meet in the airport. And she was there to lend moral support to one of her girlfriends who was engaged to a Marine in my squad. And then we talked for a few minutes. We got on the airplane, we left, and a few weeks later, in the empty deserts of Saudi Arabia, that same Marine came up to me and asked, do you remember that girl in the airport? And I was like, well, of course I do. And he handed me her address, and she said, well, she remembers you, and she wants you to write her. So I said, okay, and I wrote. And she wrote back, and then I wrote back. And then when the war was over and we flew home, she was there in the airport to meet me, and we did date for 15 months. And then we got married, and in August, it will be 33 years of marriage. Janelle's been an incredible Army spouse, and you can read in her bio that I've included in the program to see what she's provided, not just to my personal family, but to my work family too. She truly lived the what's next question. She packed up the house when it was time to move. She changed careers when it was time to move. She raised Trey, she raised Gabby, getting into all their sports and their activities, all while supporting my career in the units that I was assigned to. She sweated out the multiple combat deployments. She sweated out hearing that I had been wounded in combat, but did not hear anything beyond that for several days. She sweated out the unaccompanied overseas tours. She sweated out the too many field problems to name. She sweated out the airborne operations, worried all the more because as a lieutenant I had broken my leg on a jump, then a few months later I broke my tailbone in a different jump. And she sweated out the 6 different times in my career, once as a sergeant, once as a lieutenant, 3 times as a major, and once as a lieutenant colonel, where I and my work family at that time were informed we would deploy at very short notice to include going through RFI, only to have that deployment turned off the last minute. Now, why would I mention something that didn't happen? Because it didn't happen. But it truly illustrates the challenge and the stress that comes with a military career. You come into work on a given day, you think you're doing X, surprise, you're doing Y. No, wait, you're not going to do Y, you're going to do something else. And that's life in the military. That's part of what makes it hard, but it's part of what makes it hard for spouses as they try to answer the question, what's next? And for all of that, Janelle sweated things out daily. She heard my alarm clock go off at 0:45 in the morning, 04:45 in the morning. She endured the very late nights, which generated the unsaid questions by her and probably all military spouses. What time are you coming home? And what time should we do dinner? It all goes back to the question of what's next. So why would I serve as long as I have, especially given I could have retired a long time ago? The answer centers around my belief about serving as a profession. I believe in the United States, and I believe the United States needs a professional military. And I believe that professional military needs a professional NCO Corps and a professional officer corps. For me, serving as an NCO and later as an officer became my profession. And in doing so, for me, I came to the conclusion that serving in my profession did not depend on a particular job or a particular command or a promotion. For me, it was about the profession. What can I do to serve the unit that I'm in? And more importantly, what can I do to serve those who I serve with? So what's next for me? Well, we'll see, because the Army literally will not let me serve any longer. So I'm thinking about maybe I'll file for unemployment. But in the short term, I'm probably going to just do whatever Janelle tells me to do. Technically, I'm not out until 1 October, as Captain Grolke highlighted. My last official day in the Army is 30 September, and on that day, I'm going to put this uniform on one last time. I'll execute what's called the Fort Bragg Sunset Liberty March, where I will salute the flag one last time in the uniform. And then quietly at midnight, at that night, I will join the ranks of veterans. And as I close my career and my words here, I'm left with feelings of gratitude. Gratitude for my personal family, gratitude for my work family. The Army has been so good to me. I'm grateful to the soldiers I've served with. I'm going to miss you all, and you will live on in my memory as I continue as a veteran. If there's ever anything I can do for you, please let me know. And in closing, Janelle, I love you. Kids, I love you. And to everyone in the room, thank you for coming to the retirement ceremony.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the playing of the Army song. The words are in your program. After singing with emotion and gusto, please remain standing for the departure of the official party and the Nesbitt family. Technology. I'm sorry, sir.
Sing a song, we're the army of the free.
Ladies and gentlemen, the official party will now depart. This concludes our ceremony. Thank you for attending. Please join us in the receiving line to congratulate Lieutenant Colonel retired Robert Nesbitt and his family, airborne all the way. Also, the computer decided to do a neck update mid-ceremony. It is loading right now, so if I get it up, I'll just run the video so that everyone can see it. It is 100% worth a watch to see the history.
Oh, hey, Mr. Mike. Hey.
Let me know when the video starts.
Yeah, that's it. I'm working it. Yeah, if I get it to go, I'll go back there and let everyone know.
Right here around close.
I mean, it could get faster if it was like steady. So it's the one that she has on her neck, and then this one should be his. Yes, Asian American. I don't know, but I think that's his. That should be his speech and stuff. This is his. Yeah, I think that's yeah.
I was waiting a few minutes just in case anybody was coming here to take pictures for taking stuff down.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out that video.
Still trying to get that video up, yeah. Computer started overheating, and when they got it going, I guess, no, they went into the neck mode, it needed to update.
Yep. No. He told me he was going to hit 12 jumps yesterday. I was like, no, cut that thing. I can't let him keep it.
Canceled the flight.
You know why?
Because you weren't on this for
Yes, but no, because we didn't have any hooks across the entire solution. So when that storm came when that storm came in, we were like, because that squall was supposed to go by and we were on time, and I was like,
Taking off. Then we came here for fish day at 3 o'clock. We got done at 6:30 as soon as we stepped outside.
that was about you saw when I ran on your boat. You guys and stuff. I know, so they were like, hey, it's a 745. Like, we'll call Mr. Hickson. I'm like, so I like run out the door and talk to the aircraft like, hey, your command's gonna get this. Just giving you a heads up. Where do you want them to see it? Because it's gonna happen. ran back in, called the Air Wing command, was like, hey, you're about to get this call. They're like, yeah, we already got one of them, but we're just trying to get the info. Like, and we're all laughing. So that was why I had to run out to your route. And then luckily I walked back in, and then that was when, like, 5-10 minutes later, you all repeat. On your walk back, and then the sky just opened up. We're just like, on that walk back.
Yeah, when did it shut down in there? At the little cargo boat? But the Scoutmaster that was in there, I don't know who the guy was in there. I think it wasn't like and so the guy just like flopped down and was like on the boat and all his whole parachute.
What?
That was before you got on there.
That would be a scratch right there. Just keep the rigor.
Yeah, so it was like literally he went to go stand up and the parachute would fall out.
I've been on the office end. I go and I purposely go and actually I work in there, and then I don't have to. I saw it.
And then everything I just told them.
order out?
Did they go out?
Did, yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think it was like hour out.
Yeah. I just want to make sure.
Now, I'll get with the team, on Monday with the dates for all those, so it's on the calendar as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, and actually all the units are giving me a full agreement with their.
We'll set that next to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice.
Already.
Yeah, that supports line after 1, after 1.3 for sure.
I felt bad putting him on the spot because he, I think, couldn't give him a signal like visuals down. We'll start then.
So it doesn't matter what, right now, Thank
exceptions were approved for her. And then, anybody that wanted to take a retirement, of course, they did that option.
I love that option.
Yeah, I think it just came out a little bit too aggressive at first, and people didn't understand it. They're like, what, you know, like, and so how it came about, like the articulation of it was a little bit like, like it's towards retirement, but when they
Yeah, I
really
should
kind of
grab this
delved
stuff.
down into it.
Okay.
Like,
Sure.
well, you know,
Yeah.
This is, you know, what I
Yep.
because I already have my years and I have
And
this,
I
so.
don't wanna have no more stress on me.
There you go. That's it.
lesson for some people.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, I probably will.
Do you need me to put anything?
Like half a mile down the road, so if you don't wanna stay
I'll
long.
put it right here. You can probably.
Probably
will. Oh, yeah.
I actually most certainly will.
You want your phone?
No, my purse is out there. I just wanna make sure it wasn't in here.
Kevin Realty,
Oh, no, it's fine.
who's your booking agent for the next time you do this?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I gotta start asking for band. Now, this was,
You said the five minutes? Oh, no, that's up. That actually, that is stopped this week.
This week.
Yeah, so what it was doing, like, but some, DOD enterprises that I learned from just people that, like, at my church that work in the prisons, right? Like, they never had to do it, right? Like, so certain federal jobs didn't have to do it, but normally Friday, they send it out like, hey, 5 bullets by this time, Tuesday next week. Well, this past Friday, they like, thank you, this is the last one, and it was like a survey that we had to do, like, and they put the link in there for the questionnaire, and we just had to do that by Wednesday this time because of 4 day. And then that's it.
That's not- thank
Yeah.
God.
So we had to, the OSD, we had to do like 5 bullets of what we did. Oh, you're fine. 5 bullets of what we did for the week. Yep. Basically. Yeah, so every week we had to send 5 bullets of like this, well, it was the OSD, but basically.
so cause he was the one from saying what should go inside.
He was up with those. So apparently he had to do the same thing with Twitter, formerly X, when he got, you know, they allowed those people, I lost it. Like this is what, that fork in the road, same thing when he called that, so. But yeah, that's done now. I was like, after a while that started being redundant, like, you know, so people,
Copy and paste.
basically, you know. But they after 3 weeks, I was like, these things different when we had a ceremony here and there, you know, but.
Well, I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
You love to smile, regardless of the drama.
Hey, man, do the drama.
Yes,
I'm so proud of the drama.
And your professionalism is spike. I
Appreciate that. Yeah, it was, you know, I just forgot to say this is over.
I swear I thought that was a joke.
No, it was real. There's a lot of people did, like, my daughter was like, Mom, you ain't got it. I was like, look at this email right here. Like, what is this?
You know, we're like,
Like, when it first happened, I was like,
I kept saying it too.
I said, who reading about? Like,
Who we gonna?
who reading all these? You're talking about millions of people see
AI.
this. That's it. Chat GPT. Because that's what people were using.
Yeah, like
I was like, that doesn't even make any sense, right? So, does that really make any sense? Like, what y'all doing with this?
That's all there on the words.
That, I don't know whose that is.
Good question, because I don't know. And then someone's phone's still there too.
Yeah.
And it's still recording.
I would just leave that.
I mean, alright, so. Hey, I got it. It's your dad's.
Oh, okay. It's that one right there. My bad. I thought it was over here.
No, okay. And it was still recording.